Hey, everybody. It is the Schick Show Wednesday edition with our friend Steve Hurd. It's Steve Hurd Wednesday on Wednesday. Why do you care?
And I was like, "Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me?
Weird to
Like,
me.
imagine, can you put yourself in, say, John Dillinger's shoes or, oh God, Billy the Kid? Can you put him in your shoes? If you were alive in the 1800s, would you have gotten on the Oregon Trail?
I've noticed two things, and it just hit me that you referenced murderous people
Yeah,
when you talk about history.
sure.
It's just interesting
Yeah.
that you know.
Well, I can also I mean, I can name a couple other colonels and generals from the military that are also murderous, or I can Wyatt Earp's considered murderous,
true.
or
He was
Doc
very
Holliday.
murderous,
I
I mentioned Tony Soprano is one of my favorite
Tony-
characters
I've
from the
never
show.
seen
So,
that.
buddy,
I've never seen the show.
that
Not
series,
one episode.
oh man,
That or what's the other one with the biker gang?
oh, Sons of Anarchy.
Yeah, I've never seen it.
That's just a big soap opera.
Never seen any of it.
Not good.
That's the
I mean,
way I see
I got
all of
hooked
those
on it,
shows.
don't get me wrong. I was dumb enough to get sucked in, and then
Yeah.
at that point, you have to know what happens.
I
You
know.
would love Deadwood.
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 What is Deadwood?
Oh, Deadwood is an HBO series based on Deadwood, North Dakota, South Dakota. I'm having a
Why does
moment.
that sound familiar?
So Deadwood is a boom town.
Okay. Yep.
Gold town, and it's still there. South Dakota, Deadwood, South Dakota. It's still there. This whole show is loosely based on real people. The guy who owns a casino slash brothel. It is so good.
So I have a notes app
Okay.
with movies to watch.
Deadwood, it's has historical accuracy in it. It's fiction. It's fiction.
What year is it loosely based on?
18, probably 1870s, 80s. I'm trying to think of when the, you know, the, the Black Hills Gold and all that stuff really got hot. And it's post your 49ers and all that stuff. So,
So is that post
Civil
Indian removal?
yeah. And so it's like Indian removal happens.
While they're doing it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's the reason, when we found gold in the mountains.
That's why we had to have the Indian Removal Act, so on. Yeah. But people don't want to admit the reasons why we did some of the things that we did, but
Greed.
yeah,
Money.
sure, everything was greed.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard? It's not Margaret Sanger. Oh, Mother Jones. Have you ever heard Mother Jones' story?
Mm-mm.
Oh, yeah. You should look up Mother Jones and her
Jones.
story. I wish they would make a movie based on that.
Hmm.
I would be all in, or a series, because I think it could be a series
Okay.
like the Hatfield and McCoys. Mother Jones is supposed to be, or said to be, the founder of unions,
Okay.
like UAW, things
Yeah.
like that. But miners in West Virginia, I want to say Pennsylvania, West Virginia, and Virginia were basically slaves, paid slaves.
Oh, sure.
But they were paid such a minimal amount of money that it would take them years to save up enough money just to move away.
Right.
Otherwise, they had to keep going to work in the mines,
To
and
the
they
company store, using
then
the company's money.
yeah, exactly.
Credit.
The mines, when they found out that they couldn't keep workers because they would save up money and leave, they started paying them in chits.
Yeah.
And then the chits would only be accepted at their stores
Right.
that they built. And Mother Jones is the one who came in and armed them and said, "All right, boys, let's fight our way out of this." And she not only did she fight the mines, but she fought the state governments, because the state would send
The National
the
Guard
National
or
Guards
militia.
in
Yeah.
to help the companies
Right.
fight these
Yep. I'm familiar with
rebels.
that.
And then she was like, all right, if this is the game you want to play. And she started killing them like in the middle of the night. And
Once again, murderous people.
exactly. I know. But all right, fine. Have you ever? HBO did a series on John Adams several years ago.
Man.
One of my all-time favorites.
Yeah.
Loved that.
Yep.
Did you know they're doing another one? But it's not on HBO this time. It's on Apple Plus.
About John Adams?
No, Ben Franklin.
Yeah, I saw the one about Ben Franklin.
I started watching it. It's very dry in the beginning.
Is it?
Very dry. Ben Franklin, now in both of these, what's that actor? Michael Douglas.
Yeah.
Plays Ben Franklin.
Yeah.
Great actor. But I just think that Ben Franklin was one of those guys that when you talk to him, maybe he was so smart, or maybe he just felt like he was so smart that he wanted to talk over your head.
I can imagine that.
Yeah, I just can't get into Ben Franklin. I couldn't get into him when he was in John Adams. I hated Ben Franklin, and now that they're making a show about him, I want to watch it. But I guess I just have to be in that right mindset to watch it. But I love old movies.
Yeah.
Especially period timepieces that are accurate. My God. I'm still waiting to talk. So you've asked me on the show 3 times to talk about history, and we've talked about history for
briefly.
This is the most we've talked about it. So, and this is the one that you didn't say.
I know
was going to be history.
Do you think you could survive the 1700s?
Oh, that would be a tough one, man.
1700s, 1700s,
rough, very rough. What? No, wait a second. Wasn't the what was the witch hunts?
1600s.
1600s. Yeah. I mean, but that was only women, right?
No, there were men that were hunted.
There were men that were hung for witchcraft.
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it would have been your town person that was a little bit different.
Did you hear how that whole thing started? 2 teenage girls.
Yeah. Yeah, and it wasn't just one place either. That was happening everywhere. Yeah. That was happening all over the world.
Yeah. That just happened to be the one that everybody.
Yeah, interesting though. No one in America was ever burned at the stake. When it comes to the witch hunts,
no one was ever burned, but they were hung.
They were hung. Yeah, hanged,
drowned. Weren't they drowned?
They were drowned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And amazing that never mind. I almost.
We had to look up and see if hanged was the proper term, and it is the proper term.
It is the hang.
Yeah, it's not. You weren't hung. You were hanged.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a hanging. You hang someone, and you were hanged.
I after this is over.
Yeah,
I'll show you some things that I found.
Interesting.
Yeah, they're very interesting.
So. I don't know that I could survive 1700s, maybe 1800s. But I even question that. I think about the wherewithal it takes for someone, knowing what I know now.
Right.
Not knowing what I know now, I truly believe I could, because you don't know any better.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's what I was going to say. Are we talking like me going back in time?
Yeah.
If
they plucked you
growing
out
up
at 22 and dropped you in.
I feel like if you made it past birth, you were a pretty strong individual.
Man. You still are now.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an absolute miracle that we that we exist.
Yeah, but we don't have near as many birth deaths.
Right. Yeah. When you
like the mothers back in the even the late 1800s would die during birth.
Oh, early 1900s.
Right.
I mean, so not until the Civil War did we realize, oh, we got to clean utensils.
Yeah.
Who knew?
There was one doctor who always said, you got to clean these things.
Yeah.
You can't just be using them on everybody.
Right.
But when you're during the Civil War and you've got 30 guys out here with fragments, and that's all it was.
Oh.
Now you got to cut off their foot and
bones splintered everywhere.
Yeah,
oh
I mean,
God.
Sure.
You think about even when we were kids, people broke their bones. I remember the first person I knew of that had to have a surgery because of a broken bone was
Yeah.
Eric Strait.
Eric Strait.
Yeah, he wrecked his motorcycle out here. Well, what would be probably hole number 17.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So there used to be trails back here,
Okay.
and he wrecks his motorcycle back here. I don't remember how old we were. We were young, and breaks his leg, and it was a compound fracture. First time I ever saw bone.
Really?
Yeah. And so it was me and some other guys from the neighborhood come back here, and they called the ambulance and everything. But that was the first person I knew that had surgery for a broken
Yeah.
bone. So we're talking in the 80s.
Yeah. I didn't know anybody in the 80s
Didn't know anybody in the 80s
that had to have
that
surgery.
had to have a surgery. I
Yeah.
thought, my God, did you live in a hole?
No. I broke my arm. I broke my wrist
Well, you
in
said
the
you didn't
80s.
know. I didn't know anybody in the 80s.
Yeah, I didn't know anybody.
I was a loner, Dottie, a
I
rebel.
lived in Mel's Hole.
So, think about that. And now it's the norm. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, they can't wait.
Guy at work just had to have pins put in his thumb.
Why?
Yeah.
Why? I don't understand it. It's like, oh, hey, I got a great idea. Let's open this guy up and drive some things.
Oh,
Come on, man.
if you would have seen his thumb, you would go,
Yeah.
oh, now I understand why.
But even, like,
You might have a deformed thumb, but it will still heal.
right.
Yeah.
And it's going to be weird anyway
Yeah.
now.
Sure.
So, anyway,
Yeah.
1800s, you break a bone.
You just
Early
let it,
1900s, you break a bone.
you just let it heal.
Yeah, I mean, you hope your buddy can straighten it out enough. If you can afford
You keep
to
working.
get to a doctor,
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. Well,
and
I would
it's
think,
not like they're X-raying.
yeah, I would think that back in the 1800s and 17s, 16s, that they probably didn't do a lot of crazy things that would get them a broken bone.
Are you serious?
I mean, they're not skydiving. They're not.
I've never skydived.
But I mean, how much football was? I broke my wrist playing football.
I never broke a bone playing football.
I broke my foot running.
Okay, people ran back then, Steve.
Did they run?
Yeah, they had to run. They had to run from wolves and badgers.
True. Yes, I'll get you that. But we probably weren't running from very many wolves
No, but
in
they didn't have
Indiana.
streets either. Oh, in Indiana,
Indiana.
they were in the 1800s.
Wolves?
Oh, wolves were everywhere in the
Really?
1800s in Indiana. Absolutely.
All right.
Yeah,
I know we had bears.
had bears.
Did not know we had wolves.
Wolves were crazy,
See?
especially southern Indiana. Like, I've heard stories about them sending like almost weak animals across the river to get the wolves to come out so they could shoot them.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because they were that big of a problem.
No
Deer.
kidding.
I learned that deer weren't back in Indiana until the 60s.
Really?
Really?
I did know that.
How crazy is that?
I think I looked that up after I heard you said that on another podcast.
JD Beckley that talked about it.
Yeah.
So, you think about that. I can remember friends going hunting away from here
Yeah.
in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
They would get deer tags so they could go hunt
go
down
somewhere
southern
else. That's
Indiana or up
true.
in Michigan or wherever, because
do.
there weren't enough. The deer population here wasn't enough for everybody to go deer hunting. Now, it's like, man, those things must have thought they were rabbits for a while because there are deer everywhere.
Well, I mean, once you stop hunting in Indiana for a year, the population,
Oh,
every female is going to have a baby.
Oh my God.
So if you figure there's 100 deer every year, you're going to have 100 more
Yeah.
or 50 more if there's 50,
Minimum.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's just in a pocket area.
yeah.
I mean, you can drive around right now and probably see 12 standing out in a field.
You know what? And it's
Yeah.
crazy because I'm sure there's a lot here in Blackford County, but up north where the terrain is not flat,
Mm-hmm.
I see them like in the droves.
Really?
20
Big.
off the
big
highway, big deer. I never see any antler because they're pretty far off. But yeah, see them all the time, and that's not just one. Matter of fact, this week I saw one in a field. That's the first time in 5 years that I've only seen one.
We didn't have turkey here for a long time.
Yeah,
Um,
we have a lot of turkey now.
Bobcat.
I was asking
not
my
here.
mom about eagles.
Yeah, eagles were not.
I never remembered seeing an eagle as a child. My mom was like, "No, we didn't until the 90s."
1996,
Yeah.
97. I was down in Florida and we went to a nature preserve where there was an eagle's nest, and it was the coolest thing I've
Yeah.
ever seen. I thought,
Yeah.
I've seen an eagle's nest.
Yeah. And not everybody got to see an
Right.
eagle's nest unless you went to the Salamone always had an eagle that had its wings clipped or whatever.
Right.
That they would bring out and it
Yeah.
wouldn't do it. You know,
It was a captive.
yeah,
But not in
captive.
the wild.
Not in the wild.
And
Nothing
now,
in the wild. Now they're everywhere.
Right.
I know for a fact we have 2 here because Don Rogers
there
constantly takes
tons of
pictures of them.
there's many, many more than
Yeah.
2.
And I know you remember Levi Heaston.
Yep.
The day that he was buried, we were driving in the funeral procession. All of a sudden, the funeral procession stops. And my wife is like, "Oh my God, look at that giant eagle in the field." And there was just an eagle. And it literally sat there all the way until the very last car saw it. And then it flew away.
Wow.
And then when we got there, Troy Kaufman was the pastor. And he goes, obviously this isn't planned, but here's the scripture that I had planned to read. And it was I don't remember which one it was, but it was something about the eagle soaring over and watching or whatever. And it was, it was just kind of like a sign for everybody that, that Levi was doing all right.
There's a lot of things, man.
There's another.
I don't want to get stuck on that because
There's another couple that you should talk to.
Both get emotional. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, oh my gosh.
Those two have
the journey they've been through to
definitely been through.
Yeah. Yeah.
They would be interesting to get their story out there.
Yeah.
Dude, there's so many people here in Blackford. And I've heard you say it Steve Hurd always asks, why do people hate Blackford County so much? I always want to know. Oh man.
She's like, you still talking?
I know, right? She's just not getting off work. Can you believe that? And I even told her, I was like, I got to be here at 6 o'clock. She should have known better.
What time?
I don't know. It's like 5:30.
She's like, hey, when are you going there? Where are you at?
Are you at Scott's yet?
Well, I mean, it's incredible to think about the people that have been here, grown up here, have either stayed or gone away or moved in for a little pocket of, 8 miles by 8 miles roughly, 16 square miles
or what for the
square
county or the city?
64 square miles of Blackford County. It's roughly 8 by 8, right?
12 by 12.
Is it 12 by 12?
I think it's 12 by. Yeah, it's 12 by 12 because it's 800 east to 400 west, 400 south to 700 north.
Yeah.
So it's 12 by 11.
There's a spot where it goes to 800 though, because there's a little
out north.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, you're talking about very limited square mileage, and the things that have evolved out of here.
Yeah.
The people who have become successful out of such a small population. The fact that it still exists as its own county, I think, is interesting. And not because of the lack of population or whatever. The population has stayed somewhat stable.
We've lost about 3,000.
Yeah.
Just in the city.
Yeah. And I think that equates to pretty much the county as well.
Probably.
I think
I remember
the peak was 16,000 for the county.
Yeah, right at 16. High 15s, I want to say.
Yeah. And we're maybe just barely.
I thought we were
under
still at the
11.
15s, but I could be wrong.
I think we're under 11.
I haven't looked at it in a while. 11?
Under 11, or right around 11.
Wow.
Maybe just under 12.
Yeah, the fact that we are still here. I mean, with the industry that we have lost,
Here's some
plastics, international paper,
overhead door.
I
mean, that was a headquarters, and I mean, there's a big deal when it's your headquarters. When headquarters went down to Dallas, it's kind of near the end. But
when you lose that kind of industry, it's. And I remember a time when Dennis Weitzel was the mayor. I thought that 3M was talking about leaving because we needed their tax revenue and we didn't want to give them abatement. And they were like, well, if you don't, we're leaving.
Yeah.
I want to say that was the conversation, but hearsay is trouble when you start listening to it. But if they ever leave, them Hartford Paper,
Boy, we're in trouble.
we are in trouble. This place may become a ghost town, and this place did become a ghost town overnight almost, because I was still a cop when I remember seeing the big change, and that was during the last housing crisis. You know, night shift, any one night, Glorious and Centerfield would be packed until 3 o'clock. Not necessarily packed, but there'd be people there until 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
And then, you know, you can always find an OWI on the road any night if you really wanted to. But overnight, those places started shutting down at midnight because they didn't have any customers, and they weren't gonna. There was no point. And then the next thing you know, they were both closed down, and nobody was. There's no bar. The only bar we have now is what Nick and
No, we got Nick and Tyler's. We got Heads, which is the Depot.
the Depot, the old Depot. That was the other
We've
one.
got the bar out where Old Palma is.
Keg, yeah.
Yeah.
I always
Mel's
consider that
Keg.
one. I was talking just straight bars. So you got the Depot, and you got
And you still got the bar out, the Pickle Lounge out at the bowling alley, which I know that there's support there for them.
You still have the bowling alley
but
there's no standalone. The Depot and Nick and Tyler's standalone bars like Centerfield and Glorious.
and I think in Montpelier you only have High Street left.
Yeah, is that right?
Yeah. Yeah, because it was High Street and Oil City when I was young.
Right.
That was the two places there.
Ghost town after 11 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 12 o'clock. The only people that were out driving were people that worked, were going to work, coming home from work, that wasn't inside the city or inside the county. They were coming from GM in Fort Wayne or somewhere else in this far away town. And it was just a matter of time before they leave. But yeah, this town has definitely changed. When Peyton was playing, when we were down there playing softball and baseball, I don't know what your girls' rosters look like, but we had at least 4 girls teams, and we had like 5 or 7 boys 12 and under teams.
That was a transition time for softball where at one point there were 32 kids playing girls softball total.
Yeah.
And then that changed when we broke away, formed Blackford softball. That grew to like 80.
Yeah.
So there were in the county,
right?
Because we were drawing from Montpelier as well. So, and we were partnering with Montpelier. We were partnering with Southern Wells to keep to keep that league afloat and to keep it competitive.
Right.
But it was partnerships. It was going, okay, there's some times changing. We got to make some changes with it.
Yeah.
And in doing so, you know, travel ball is what we were talking about earlier, where it's not kids going out and organizing sports for themselves anymore.
Yeah.
It's now the kids that used to go organize it for themselves. We're now going and organizing it for their kids and living out, you know, some of
their
them
fantasies.
Some of them were, some of them were not. Some of them were genuine in trying to create a better opportunity for their kids.
You're the only reason that I did it. I don't know if you remember the conversation we had. You're the only reason I took over the Tri-County softball team.
I did not know that.
Yeah. I went and talked to you about it.
I remember the conversation, but I didn't know it was that big.
You're the if you said one thing that was negative, I probably would have never done it.
I loved it. I love coaching those kids.
Yeah.
And being a part of that program.
I did too.
There was a point in time though when I was ready to just pull my kids and go play somewhere else because it was that bad.
Yeah.
And my wife was having nothing to do with that.
Yeah.
She said that my kid's not playing in Upland.
Yeah.
My kid's playing at Blackford.
Yeah. Let's see. Mine didn't say that. Mine just said whatever.
Yeah.